So that was, this lesson was to learn how to use an interlinear. So what, looking at the worksheet, page 5.1, the two things you're going to look for that might indicate some special emphasis. You're going to look for a couple things in the word order, which are.
One was placed in the word at the beginning.
Okay, placing the word at the beginning.
And a variation in the normal.
Okay, other than the normal word order. Okay, so let's see how we can apply that here on the next page. So we're looking at, as an author, you could emphasize a word by placing it at the beginning of a clause. So we're going to look at some examples. And these are, we're going to go back to, let's see, does he suggest you use an interlinear? In the interlinear. There is no interlinear here though, is there? Oh, he's just suggesting that you use one. Correct. Yeah. Well, what he did in his, when he taught this, he had a lab set up that had a bunch of interlinears, but we have an interlinear online. And you found those, I assume? Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me just stick this up in front of us. So you have a hard copy. Do you have a hard copy of an interlinear?
No, I went and used the Bible Hub interlinear.
Bible Club?
Hub.
Oh, Bible Hub?
It's near the bottom.
Yeah.
Right here.
And that one was a good one, you thought?
For me.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, and it's got some parsing too. So we're looking at John 1.
Which website is this?
Bible Hub. So John 1.
Bible what?
Hub.
Hub.
H-U-B.
Is that on this list?
Yeah, it's near the bottom.
So the last list they sent or the first list?
The second list.
The second list.
Okay.
Try to use some of the others. This one is good.
You want to go to John?
John 1:19. So, in 1:19 it says, and this is the testimony of John,
Change the book at the top.
when sent to him the Jews from Jerusalem, priests and Levites, that they might ask, "Who are you?" So the last three words in that verse.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
That'll change the
You can just enter it in up in the. So 119, the last three words, they wanted to ask him, "Who are you?" And the order is,
who are?
"You who are." Yeah. So that seems to be other than normal word order, and "you" is placed at the beginning. So that's being stressed. And then in verse 21a, and they asked him, "What then are you?" Oh no, "Are you Elijah?" You, Elijah are? Yeah, you, Elijah are? So again, you.
All I get is English.
Are you using an interlinear?
I was on that one, but then I was going to go back to.
Did you get it?
I got a different answer for that one.
What did you have?
I thought Elijah was first. Clearly in this one.
Yeah, I have Elijah first too.
So I was going to go back to where I used the Blue Letter Bible one, and I was curious if that in a
So,
different order.
yeah, let's look at a different text. So, I'm looking for one that uses the I saw one. This is Westcott and Hort Greek text.
Yeah, the Blue Letter Bible one has Elijah first.
Does it? So here's where we're.
And it says it's based on Textus Receptus.
Okay, all right. So Bible Hub is not using Textus Receptus, and the Textus Receptus has Elijah first?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's obviously what this author was using, was the Textus Receptus. So do you remember? So you have the Textus Receptus there in front of you, Stephen's one. That's the TR, because it's from 1550, I'm assuming. Yeah. So and it's an interlinear, right?
Yeah.
So did you look this one up in there?
No.
John 1:21?
You want 121?
No, I wanted to see what it's in your interlinear. Let's see what my interlinear. Why did he pick one that has a...
Okay. I got John 121.
What is the question? John 1:21a says, I don't want to take too long on this. So, and they asked him, what then? You, Elijah, are? What does yours say in that question?
Oh, it's different. This one.
Can you see that? Yeah, this one says, Elijah, are you?
Yeah.
That's what yours says, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you've got a magnifying glass.
Yeah, I'm getting a little too old for this kind of text.
Okay. And then,
Scripture for all interlinear says it's based on Textus Receptus. If that's the word for Elijah, are you?
yeah. And this one here, I think, is based on Nestle's text, which is the Nestle Greek text, which is closer to the Textus Receptus.
Then I'm going to use this.
So Textus Receptus, again, the only two translations, modern translations, the only King James is not a modern translation. The only modern translation that's still using the Textus Receptus is the New King James. So that's a modern translation, a recent translation within the last 20 or 30 years, and it uses the Textus Receptus. The Greek professor at Biola, when I was going there, did his doctoral on why the Textus Receptus is better than the newer ones. So there are people who favor the Textus Receptus. So the argument is the Textus Receptus is also called the majority view. So the majority of extant, that means things that exist, the majority of extant manuscripts of the 8,500 agree with the Textus Receptus. The minority view would be, the text that I use is called the United Bible Society's text. And it's a minority view, But the argument against using the majority would be that there were a whole lot more written in the majority view than there were in the minority view. The minority texts are older than the ones in the majority. The minority ones are more broadly scattered geographically. That's another test. In other words, if you find a reading that's in Alexandria and one that's in Caesarea and one that's in Rome, and those all agree, then you would weigh that a little more heavily than one that's just found in one geographic region, because that would indicate probably that it was, give you a better indication that it was original. So those are some of the things that they think through in making those decisions. Dating texts, some of them, how do you date these texts? You find something, you unearth something, you say, how do you know what century that's from? Well, you have to look at where did you take it from, out of the ground, or how did you discover it? There's even some that's done by pinpricks in parchments. When they would lay them out to write on them, they would put pins in them to hold them in place, and they can date some of them by the way the pinpricks are in them. So it's quite a science. But so again, the reason why we have so many with the Textus Receptus that are free online is because the Textus Receptus is free. There's no copyright on it. It's been around for hundreds of years. So that's why you'll find it on some sites. And I imagine to use the United Bible Society's text, somebody's paying some kind of royalties to be able to put it online, because that's how copyrights work. It's how people...
Gideon was giving away King James Bible.
Yes. That's yeah. Yeah. So anyway, that's enough on that. And then the third one example here, John 1:21b, are you the prophet? And this one says, the prophet are you, in Bible Hub 1:21b. Yeah, the prophet are you. So the only one that's different is is B, the second one. Excuse me, between the two readings. So now that you've discovered what was being stressed, why was it emphasized? Read through the passage of Scripture again, noting John's answers, and then give your reasons why the priests and the Levites asked these questions and not others, and why these three words were emphasized and not others. You will want to use the cross-references in your English Bible for this, especially checking Old Testament references. So what did you discover? I discovered some things. What did you discover in answering that question? Why do you think they emphasized those words?
Well, the first question, there was a reference to the Messiah, so they were asking whether he was the Messiah, the chosen one that they were expecting to come.
Uh-huh.
Well, Elijah was supposed to come right before the Messiah.
Right.
And then...
And who's the prophet?
The one that Moses talked about.
Yeah.
After me, a prophet.
Right.
God will raise up a prophet like me.
Who is the prophet?
Who were they asking?
John the Baptist.
John the Baptist.
Yeah.
So, any other insights that you gathered as you saw that would be?
The way I with the word order thing, like they started out with who are you? You. Who are you?
Yeah.
And then it's like saying, just to me, it's like saying Elijah.
Right.
That's the emphasis. Prophet.
Right.
Even though they had made full sentences out of it, it felt like it was. That's in modern lingo. That's what it felt like to me.
Just one word questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he said, no, he wasn't Elijah. And then they asked if he was the prophet. Yeah. Anyway, there's a little glimpse into something that word order can tell you. And it doesn't tell you anything new, but it gives you a feel for how that confrontation went. Do you see you see that? Okay. So, any question about that? Try your hand in another passage, Romans 5.
Romans 5.
Romans. Oh, this has got a quick way to do this. Romans. So we had John, now we have Paul. Try and another passage. Now look at at verse 6 in the interlinear. Which word seems to be out of place? Verse 6 of Romans 5. Yes, indeed. Yet indeed, Christ, being of us without strength, still according to the right time, for the ungodly died. So how does that verse read normally? It indeed.
What verse in
Romans 5:6.
5:6?
Romans 5:6. For when we were still without strength, in due time Christ died for the ungodly, is what it says.
So this one, again, is based on Textus Receptus. The word order that I wrote down from what it says here is, yet for Christ were when we without strength in due time for the ungodly died.
Right.
So it starts with Christ.
Yeah, and the verb is at the very end.
Yeah.
Yeah, so which one seems to be out of place?
Seems like Christ is out of place.
When we were without strength, still according at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly would be how we'd read it, yeah.
Yeah, that Christ should go with God,
Right.
that he died for the ungodly. But in the Textus Receptus, Christ is way back at the beginning, and died for the ungodly is at the end.
Is that what you got, David?
That's what I did. I confess I was wallowing. I was trying to figure that one out.
Okay, well that's what
Looking at the English the translation where it says Christ died for the ungodly. Again, the two main parts. Christ is at the beginning, died
right.
is at the end.
But we have these clauses in the front, in the beginning. Yet, when we were without strength, is that what this one says? Yet, when we were still without strength, that's the NKJV. Let me get the NASB. For while we were still helpless, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. So, that phrase at the beginning, but then Christ is stuck way up at the front, which makes it seem like he wants. And in the context, I put down, because hardly a man alive would die for a sinner, but the Christ of God did it for us. You know, that was the point I think that Paul was making. Mm-hmm. Hope does not disappoint. The love of God has been poured out within our hearts through the Holy Spirit has given us Christ. Yeah, he's just pointing to Christ, I guess, would be what he's in the context. It reminds me of Paul that said, I only want to make one thing known among you, and that is Christ and him crucified. And that kind of sounds, that's consistent with how he's worded this. Okay, let's move on. I don't want to, we've got a lot of stuff to cover. I don't want to, unless you got questions. Ephesians 2, 8 to 10, pretty familiar passage. Ephesians 2, 8 to 10. And he wants us to focus in on study verse 10 in the interlinear. What word appears to be out of place, ignoring the Greek word gar and its English translation for, in the phrase, for we are his workmanship. So specifically looking at that phrase in verse 10, for we are his workmanship.
Why do they put the article tame in front there, but it's not really translated?
Which verse are you in?
8.
8.
The sentence starts off with dative.
Right. So, for is always, the gar always takes second place. So even though the sentence starts with the word for, and then the te kariti, the grace, we don't translate the, but we would translate it by grace because it's in dative. So it's an instrumental use of that dative case.
It's just telling you it's dative because it's...
Well, kariti would tell us it's dative too, but I mean that's a Greek way to say it. We wouldn't put the article in there, and that's why they don't even translate the article, because it just doesn't work in English to put the in there. For by the grace you are saved, we could say, for by the grace you are saved. And if we were doing an exegesis of this, we'd say, okay, why is the article there? And one of the reasons that it might be there is because he's talking about something specific, a specific grace. Or it could be there because it's something that he's referred to before, and so we would call that the use of that article would be previous reference. So he's referring back to something that he talked about previously. So that's my short answer to your question. But let's look at verse 10. It says, of him, for of him. We'll go ahead and move the for to the first position because. Again, that's how we do it in English. In Greek, they put it second position. For of him we are workmanship. So what word seems to be out of order? Him, yeah. Yeah, we are his. Yeah, we are the workmanship of him. We are his workmanship. So, we've separated the pronoun his, possessive pronoun, from the word workmanship with two other words. And so there's a reason for that, because we're his workmanship. And I don't know how else to translate that except make it italics or something like that. For we're his workmanship. Not our workmanship, we're his workmanship. And so that's an explanation, because it starts with the word for. It's an explanation of what he was saying in verse 9. Not a result of our works that we have done, that we may boast, because his workmanship we are, not our works. There was also another way for an author to emphasize a word. This would be to make a variation from the normal work order. So we'll look at 1 Corinthians 2, verses 6 to 13, zeroing in on verse 10. 1 Corinthians 2. And, he has us write out the words here. Wow, look at that. For we, verse 10. Here it is. For to us, God has revealed through the Spirit, God has revealed it through the Spirit. The Spirit searches all things, even the depths of God. For to us has revealed God through the Son. So we would probably put, for God has revealed to us through the Son, or through the Spirit. God has revealed it. We have to supply that from the context. So what word seems to be emphasized?
To us.
To us. Yeah. And you can see how that fits in the context. Verse 8 says, this is amazing, verse 8. None of the rulers of this age understood, for if they had understood it, the Lord of glory would not have been crucified. God hid, and when he's talking about the rulers of this age, I believe he's talking about spiritual powers, rulers and authorities, as Paul calls them in Ephesians chapter 6. So basically what this is saying is Satan and his hordes were kept from understanding the plan of God to crucify his Son, because if he would have known that, he wouldn't have done it, because he wouldn't have helped Jesus do him in. So, but as written, what eye has not seen, ear has not heard, has not entered the heart of man, all that God has prepared for those who love him. For to us, God has revealed them through the Spirit. Okay?
I just had a question on that if you look at the things that step 1, 2, 3, in question 7, the not steps, but different things that could potentially, variations in word order. I wondered if you could make an argument that, based on number 3, putting the word last in the clause, that Spirit is actually being emphasized there, either primarily or maybe even secondarily.
Yeah. Yes. I think that would be a good thing. Yep. Yep. And that's, I mean, that fits so much into the revelation of God as being the work of the Spirit. So, uno más, Hebrews 7. Who wrote Hebrews? How is it that we have a book of the Bible? Well, there's a lot of books of the Bible that we don't know exactly who wrote them, especially in the Old Testament. We have traditional ideas, but parts of the book had to have been written by other people. You know, like Samuel couldn't write about how he died. So,
And Moses probably wouldn't have written that he was the most
humble man in the world. Yes, that kind of would be contradictory, wouldn't it? Now Moses was the most meek man in all the earth. What? And Job. Yeah. Well, I guess that could have been written by him. Read Hebrews 7, 1-10 in your English Bible. Study verse 4 very carefully in the interlinear. Verse 4. Hebrews 7. Consider how great this one was, to whom even a tenth Abraham gave out of the best spoils, the patriarch. Okay. So the patriarch, the last two words, can you see what case that's in?
Yes, it was singular.
Yeah. So that's nominative, which would tell you, huh?
Which verse?
Verse 4,
Verse 4.
Hebrews 7:4. So, so that would tell you it's the subject, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it was placed last.
Yes. Consider now how great this one was. He's referring to Melchizedek, to even a tenth Abraham gave. This is interesting. This isn't in, what book is that in? That's in Genesis. It doesn't say in Genesis that he gave him a tenth out of the best of the spoils, but the writer to Hebrews says that.
Mm-hmm.
So it comes last. The writer is emphasizing that the priesthood of Melchizedek is greater than that of Aaron because Abraham, the father of the Jews, and Levi as well, paid tithes to Melchizedek. I just did some study on Melchizedek a couple of weeks ago because we're going through that in our Friday morning men's Bible study. Melchizedek means king of, Zedek is my king.
Mm-hmm.
And Zedek is used in composition in a number of words. And it means what?
Well, Hebrews gives the name, meaning in the name, meaning king of, isn't one of them, there's like...
King of peace. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which would be, that would be king of Salem, because Salem comes from the same root as shalom. But there's another thing that he's called king of something, I can't remember.
I think it's there in Hebrews 7.
Yeah.
Both over there.
King of righteousness.
King of righteousness, there you go. Yeah.
Also kings.
There's another guy named Adonizek. There's some other names that have that Zedek in them. Anyway. So, any questions on that? Let's go to chapter 6. Chapter 6 basically is showing you how to use a bunch of books that you probably won't use. He gives 4 different routes. These are pre-internet days. So he gives 4 different routes to look up a word. So he gives us the word taste from 1 Peter 2:3. So let's look at 1 Peter 2:3 in your interlinear. 1 Peter 2:3. If indeed you have tasted that the Lord is good. So now we're not looking at word order, we're looking at how to be able to find out what that word is. I wonder what that word is in Greek. So you're reading along and you see if you've tasted that the Lord is good. What does that remind you of? Can you remember a place in the Old Testament where it says anything about that? Psalm 34:8 says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good." So, if you have tasted that the Lord is good. So I would say that's an allusion to the Old Testament that Peter is making here. So what does taste mean? That's kind of an unusual expression, to taste and see that the Lord is good, because taste we think of with our tongue and in our mouth, and so how does that work? So that might be a word that you'd want to look up and say, let's see what that means. And so now we see this word egusasta, okay? But what word is that? What's the root of that word? What's the lexical form of that word? How do we know that? Some of these sites one of them that I showed you the first time. It's not Scripture for All. Maybe it's this one here. So 2 Peter, what is it? 2:3. No, 1 Peter 2:3. Oh, this is what I was just looking at. Not what I wanted. That's Bible Hub. Well, that's not what I wanted. I'm looking for that one that shows you can just touch on it. It tells you what it means. This is 1 Peter 2. Okay. This is a nice one here. Is it still showing up there? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So 1 Peter 2:3. I can make that a little bigger. So, okay, this particular word is not finished. This is part of the 10% that they haven't finished yet. Egusasta. What?
I just have to show you this, because it's all right there. I just was skimming ahead.
Oh, okay.
This is Blue Letter Bible. Here's the
Okay.
thing. And
This is
here's
not-
the lexical.
Okay, so this is not an interlinear though, is it?
Well, it is only in the sense that here's the Textus Receptus up here, and
Okay.
you have, it's sort of a sideways interlinear, because here's the Greek and here's the English over here.
Okay.
But it has the lexical right there. So you don't have to go anywhere else. It has the form that's in the verse, and then it has the lexical right underneath it.
Okay, so here I
So,
am,
yeah. So all you do is put in your verse.
right here,
Uh-huh.
and what do I put for this?
You can choose a different version, but I think it might take you, when you get to this level, it might always take you to the King James. I'm not sure.
1 Peter 2. You just put the verse in,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah, and then just say go. You don't even have to put the verse in, because it's going to give you the whole
Chapter.
chapter. And then you touch on tools and interlinear.
Oh, so it does have interlinear.
And then
Oh, this is
this is the reverse, but if you touch on that tab, then that's what I've got on my screen.
Okay.
It's-
all
so
right.
at the top of that column, you have the Greek Textus
Yes.
Receptus right there.
Yes.
But then you have all the words in there, because it's interlinear, you have them in the right order, and
Do you see?
it has the lexical.
Do you see this one that I'm doing here? Blue Letter Bible. So this has the verse, excuse me, up at the top there, 1 Peter, if so be ye have tasted the Lord is gracious, that's King James. And then it has it Greek, and then it has each word going down, has Strong's number, it's got the English and the KJV, it's got it transliterated here, and then when you come down, Egusasta, there's the lexical form of the word, guamai. And does it pronounce it for you?
It does. You touch the little speaker thing and it says the word.
Strong's G, 1089, Ghoul.
Is that even right?
No, that's not. It's not guo. It's guamai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, and I think I saw that in here as well. He made a comment on that when I was looking through this. There was one other one, but it wasn't. Yeah, this one here, it was the Mark of Cain, it was called, or something like that. Mark Cain. I liked it, but I don't think it was an interlinear either. So you can do on this one. So there's a number of them that you can do, and if you could make it so that you could have your computer open and just go from one screen to another. Excuse me. So this one here, do you see this? Get rid of this. So if you just touch, or if you have it on your computer with a mouse, you just hover over it, and it gives you the lemma. Whoops. And it tells you it's a deponent verb infinitive. Infinitive, aorist middle infinitive. Taste and see. I don't think that's an infinitive.
That's interesting, doesn't it? I just pulled that up on the, if you go to the blue letter one, it has a parse button off to the side.
And how does it parse
And
it?
It parses it, it says aorist, middle deponent, indicative.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not infinitive. It's
What site do you have on the screen there?
That's called Mark Cain. It was listed under the first ones that I sent you the first day. It's called the Mark of Cain, but it's just called markcain.com. So, but how good is that if they don't parse it correctly for you? Because I just know looking at that's not an infinitive, because it's not an infinitive ending. An infinitive, this has a, do you remember that the epsilon at the beginning is called an augment, and there's only augments in the indicative.
Oh,
There's no,
yeah, right.
there's no augments in an infinitive. So, well, sorry, Mark of Cain, you lose. Wow, I've got a bunch of them open now. So now I'm back to that one. So you just hit parse.
Right, and it gives you another window with
Verb, aorist, middle deponent, indicative, second person plural. I like that better. I just don't like that it's King James and Texas Receptus. But anyway, so that's the whole purpose of this lesson 6, is to explore how to find out a word. So with all of those links that I've given you, you can try different ones and see which one you like. Lisa likes Blue Letter Bible.
Yeah, I think I've kind of made that.
You've been using that for other things as well?
I've been using this pretty heavily for a few years.
Okay.
And I just found out that if you, you have a limited amount, but if you click, once you get to where your verse is that you want, if you click at the top where it says KJV on the blue block at the very top, you can change, well, even to the right of that, if you, whichever one, you can choose a different version. Not every version has, some of them revert to King James, but if you change it to NASB, for example, it changes the whole chart to NASB. I think you have to click that. So there you go. It's not down in the chart where it's got it actually in English. It's the NASB, not the King James anymore.
Oh, down here?
No, even in the...
Oh, in here?
Yeah, if you read across,
Okay.
the column is now English NASB, not
Okay.
King James anymore.
Very good. So there's your case for the Blue Letter Bible. I'm going to look at those other ones and see if I can find one that has a more modern Greek text that I like. But that's good. So here's the way he says to do it. I mean, there's ways that he says to do it using Strong's number and then look up Strong's number and stuff like that. I've told you about these here. This, by the way, this is called the Analytical Greek Lexicon, and it's published by Bagster. I got this used on, it's the same one who published your interlinear there, Bagster, in England. Made in Great Britain, it says. Somebody put little tabs on it, which kind of tends to tear up the pages. Anyway.
That's the same as what's on page 63.
Yes, that's what he has there. He has some of them. I'm not even going to go through those, you can read through it if you're interested, but I mean, there's an Englishman's Concordance. I used to have one of those where you look up the word in English, and then on page 6.5. So if you wanted to look up taste, you would go to this page on Englishman's Concordance, and taste is in the, where is it? T-A-S-T. It's in the third column about the middle. It says taste, guamai. So, you know, that tells you you found the English word taste, and there's only one in the King James, and this is all based on the King James. There's only one Greek word that's translated taste, so you're good. But if your word you were looking up was take, you'd have a hard time figuring out which Greek word it was, because there's a whole bunch of words.
Are these numbers, is that the Strong's number?
I don't...
What says taste 115?
Yeah, taste 115. He tells in here, I forget. Take the Englishman's Concordance, taste in the King James Version, only one Greek word. Look up. So, well, the goal of this particular one was just to find out what its lexical form was. So once you find out its lexical form, then what do? Then you can look it up in a lexicon. Yeah. So this is this analytical lexicon. So I can look up agusasthai in here, and it has every form of every word in it. Agusasthai. Agusasthai. Here's where knowing the alphabet really helps. Man. There it is, agusastha. And it says it's from guamai, and it says it's second person plural, aorist indicative. And then you can look above that. It says it's from guamai. Oh, yeah, but now you have to go look it up under gamma, because this I was looking it up under epsilon because it has every form of every word. So now I got to go to gamma and look up guamai.
Is Strong's Concordance online?
Online?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or what?
That's one of the other things I like about Blue Letter Bible. If you click on the Strong's word, it takes you to another whole page where you can see, that's what I'm looking at right now for guamai. You can see the Strong's definition, and you can see every verse in the whole Bible that uses the same word right there on the page.
Yeah. So this, I look up guamai, and it says future, and it gives the form for that. It gives aorist form. Says it's middle from guo. So there you go, Lisa. Says
yeah, that's what he was.
Yeah.
That's what he already pronounced it. Okay.
To cause to taste. It means to taste, to take food, to have perception of, to experience. So that's a more of a metaphorical meaning, to have perception of or to experience. So that's probably how it would be used. To taste the Lord would be to experience the Lord, would be another way of translating that. I wonder how a modern translation would say that, because taste is clearly metaphorical. So anyway, so that's what that whole lesson was about, with photocopies from different lessons. So let's go to 7, because we're done with that. We can do it all online. It's a whole lot easier. Are you comfortable being able to find a word and do it online?
Yeah.
David, you too? Yeah, no problem. Okay. So as you've seen in the previous lessons, Greek words have many forms. A single noun has 10, a single adjective 24, a single verb almost 500. So it can be a lot of different forms. Once you learn all the basic endings, then you can look at it and know, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to look at it and look at it online, and it's so much quicker than it is doing one of these things. Interlinear, then to an analytical, then to a regular lexicon. If you can do it all on one website, that's great. So, are you familiar with the expression parsing? To parse, you're clicking on a link that says parse, and basically that tells you what form of the word it is. If it's a noun, it's going to be nominative, accusative, genitive, or dative. If it's a verb, it's going to be what tense is it, what mood, what voice, what number, what person, all those things. Okay? So, we're back here at the bottom of this page, egusastha, at the just above the last paragraph on the page. It says egusastha, second person, plural, aorist, indicative, guamai. So do all those things mean something to you yet? You know what second person plural means. Sure. So that's y'all. Aorist, this has aorist 1. There's a first aorist and a second aorist, and we're not going to bother with that because it's just a little deeper than we need to go in what we're doing here. And then indicative. So it doesn't say that it's active. You'll have to, depending on which tools you're using, this particular one is just a photocopy from this analytical lexicon. And it didn't put active. If it's active, it might not say it. But this is middle deponent because it has an amai ending. Remember, if it's got an omega ending or a mu iota, which is me, is how you pronounce that, like diknumi. It's just a verb that ends with me instead of omega. Those are both active, but if you have a lexical form that ends with amai, then it's either if it's the lexical form, it's middle deponent. That means it's middle in form, active in voice. Okay? So it translates just like an active. Oh, and here he's got more stuff from the analytical lexicon. So page 3, 7.3. So second person, plural, aorist, indicative, active voice. It doesn't say that. So if you remember, going back to page 413, that chart that he had, that had aspect and tense. So if it's aorist, indicative, it's past time, and it's punctiliar. Okay? And a key to that is the augment. If it has the augment at the front, it tells you it's indicative, and it tells you it's aorist. And if it's aorist indicative, it's talking about not only punctiliar action, but past time. All right. And we're not even going to interpret this information until we get to lesson 8. We're just learning how to parse here, okay? So he goes into here talking about cognates. Page 7.4, in the margin there it says discovering its cognates. Cognate is just a brother or sister or cousin word, okay? So sometimes it's helpful if you're studying a word, to look at some of its cognates, to see how that word is used with a little bit of differences. And he uses some interesting expressions here. You know, sometimes he talks about the clan leader, the word, the lexical form of a word that's kind of the most root word of this. So for instance, he uses, over on page 7.5, he looks at this word, I guess it starts at the bottom of page 7.4, the last word, dikaiomata, dikaiomata. And it comes from dikaioma. This is from Revelation 19:8, righteous deeds. It's translated in the King James, the righteousnesses of the saints. Could be translated the righteous deeds of the saints, talking about the linen garments. So if you look that up, you're going to come finally and you're going to see that the lexical form of this word, righteous deeds, is dikaioma. It's at the top of page 7.5. You see that it's nominative case or accusative. The form is the same. It's plural in number, and the lexical form of the word is dikaioma. He's still using this information from the analytical Greek lexicon. But he says, if you look at that same page, you'll see that there's another word called decay, which is another word, but it's from the same root. Okay? And so he calls that the clan leader. And I don't want to go any more into that other than to say it's helpful sometimes to look and see cognates of words in trying to understand a meaning. And then to dive even deeper is to take those cognate words and see how they're used in various contexts. And it gives you a fuller picture for what the word may mean. One of the dangerous things to do is to break down a word by its parts and see that and think that you can understand what it means. For instance, ecclesia. You're familiar with ecclesia, that word? The church, yeah. So it comes from two words, ek, out of, the preposition, kleos, or kaleo, the verb to call. So people say the church is the called out ones, okay? That seems to make pretty good sense. That's really not how it's used. It's breaking a word down like that and trying to determine from its etymology what it means is not really a best way to find a word meaning. If you took the word butterfly and broke it down by its parts, it wouldn't tell you what it means. The word should be translated assembly, is probably the best translation. But it's used in the book of Acts of a mob. Where one city that Paul is in, and there's just a big ruckus that comes up, and remember the city official comes out and says, we got to break this thing up. We're going to get ourselves in trouble with the higher up government. And it calls them an ecclesia, a mob, pretty much is what it is. I was doing some research within the last year. I thought, well, what would Jesus have said in Matthew 16 and 18 when he used the word ecclesia? If he was speaking in Aramaic, what would he have said? So I was doing some research to find out what the Aramaic translation of ecclesia would be. And actually it comes from the same root as Knesset, which is the governing body in Israel today. And that probably is a better picture of what ecclesia means than called out ones. I know it's a tempting thing to do, is to break something down. For instance, a favorite expression of the Apostle Paul, oh, I lost my computer. A favorite expression of the Apostle Paul is epigenosko. So gnosko is the word for I know. So that's the lexical form. There's two basic words that are used for to know in Greek. One is gnosko and one is, it slips my mind right now. Anyway, the word agnostic comes from gnosko. So you add the not, the alpha at the beginning means not, like asexual is not sexual, and agnostic, so you put the alpha in front of gnosko and you have the root of the word, or where we get the word agnostic from agnos. Anyway.
Well, when Jesus used the word ecclesia, he wasn't really talking about church in the way that we, and this was before there was a church.
Right. So was he speaking prophetically of what was coming? And it seems that he was. I'm just suggesting most Bible scholars would say that Jesus didn't speak in Greek. I mean, I'm sure he could speak Greek. I'm sure he could speak Sanskrit too. But the lingua franca in Israel of that day was Aramaic, because that's what they came back from captivity with, was Aramaic, which is the same alphabet as Hebrew, but different words. So you're saying...
Well, so what did he... You're saying maybe he was being prophetic, and I'm thinking that that's probably not... Church is probably not the best translation of what he meant.
It's interesting. Again, I've studied this quite a bit. Not as... I'm sure there's plenty of people who have studied more than me, but I don't like the translation church for ecclesia, particularly because it's been co-opted, and it's in our culture it means a building, and it doesn't mean that in the Bible. It means people. And Wycliffe, it was either Wycliffe or Tyndale, I forget which one it was. I think it's which one was killed for his translation. I think it was Wycliffe. Yeah. He translated ecclesia. In his translation, he translated congregation, which is my favorite translation of ecclesia.
Makes sense.
Because it points to people. And that's, I think, closer to the original meaning of it is congregation. So, as a matter of fact, I have a personal ongoing campaign to change it to congregation. So whenever I get a chance, I always use the word congregation instead of church, because I think it speaks better of what the Scripture says. So it's my one-person campaign, but you could join me if you want to. Anyway, so Paul uses this word epigenosko, and the Greeks love to put prepositions on the front of verbs. So the only thing we can understand from that, what most Greek scholars, biblical scholars would say, it's a heightened form of the word. It doesn't really change. It's always translated to know or knowledge, epignosis. It's just knowledge. But that's Paul's favorite word for that. It's kind of like John, whenever he talked about believing in Jesus, he always used eis instead of en for the preposition. He puts, believe in Jesus, eis. And no other writers do that. John does that. And so some of the writers had their own peculiar way that they said things. Paul is a fun one, because often he'll use a word, and we have an expression for a word that's only used once in the Bible. In the New Testament, we call it a hapax legomena. and I wish I could translate that for you right now, but it's called a hapax legomena, or a scholar might just shorten that and call it a hapax. And it means it's only used once in the New Testament. So when you're looking up a word and you find out and you do a word search and say, where else is this used? Because you want to look in other contexts to see how that word is used, and you come up with one place. The one that you're looking at, that's the only place it's used. That makes it real difficult to compare it with other uses or other authors to see how they've done that. And so you'll come, and Paul has a number of words that are hapax, and some of them you feel like, I think he just coined this word, like theopneustos, God breathed. Was that used anywhere else besides Paul? I don't know, but he uses it, I think, twice in the New Testament. But it seems like, it feels to me like it's a word that was coined by him. God breathed. So anyway.
Are these words sometimes compared back to ancient Greek, to whatever Homer wrote or whatever? Was the ancient Greek still being spoken in Greece, or was it completely gone over to Koine Greek by the first century?
I don't know if Koine Greek was being spoken in Rome or Greece. It was the language of the Roman Empire was Greek, but Koine Greek, from study that I've done recently, was not the Greek of the rhetoricians. The ones who Greek is famous for its rhetorical power, etc. And the Greek of the New Testament doesn't seem to be quite that same high use. But Koine Greek was the Greek of the people, so maybe it was throughout the empire, but just wasn't spoken. The philosophers perhaps used a higher form, or I don't know. But I know that there are reference books. There was one I used to have, which I lost when my library turned to mold. Moulton and Milligan. It was a big, thick book about the size of a Strong's Concordance, and it had extra biblical uses of New Testament words, and it gave context of them. Where they were from and how it was used. And it was a great source to use. And I doubt if that one's online, because it's just not that. Wouldn't have that broad a use. So. Anyway, it would go back sometimes to Homer and say how it was used in Older Greek. So that's the end of chapter 7. It's really basically just simply talking about how to parse a word, and the computer does it for you. So some of those keys are helpful, though, like an augment. But I don't expect that you guys are going to learn, to look at a word and say, "Oh, that's second feminine singular." You've learned the article, and that will help you. In a lexicon, here's one thing that I could mention to you. In a lexicon, I think look at page 7.6. This will give you an idea. So, if you look on the left column there, the large word dike, it has ace after it and then hey. See that? So the ace, that's telling you that this is, and the hey is telling you this is a noun. Okay? The ace, what that ace is, that's telling you what the genitive form of it is. So this is, it's a feminine noun, you can see, because it has hey there, the article hey. So that tells you it's a feminine noun, and in the genitive, it has an ace. That's what it would be, decase in the genitive. And the reason that they tell you that is because when you're learning Greek on the high road, you're going to learn what are called declensions. You remember that? And so there's first declension, second declension, third declension, and what those are simply just patterns of ways that endings are on nouns and adjectives. Okay? So that's why that, but then the next word, dikaios, doesn't have that. See, it's got a aya and an ion. Do you see where I'm looking? The next one down from dike. Okay, this tells you that this is an adjective, because that's just the, dikaios is the masculine form of the word, dikaia is the feminine form, and dikaion is the neuter form. Because remember, adjectives don't have gender. The adjective matches the gender of the noun that it's modifying. So every adjective has as many forms as the article does, depending on what it's modifying. So if dikaios was modifying a masculine noun, it would be dikaios. If it was modifying a feminine noun, it would be dikaia. If it was a neuter noun, it would be dikaion. Okay? The next one down, dikaios, it tells you it's an adverb. You see that? Mm-hmm. A key to knowing an adverb, if the lexical form ends with omega sigma, it's probably an adverb. It's kind of like in English, if it ends with an ly, it's probably an adverb. Mm-hmm. And that's the same is true with Greek. So then the next word down, dikaiosune, is that an adjective or a noun? Yeah, it'd be a noun because it's got the article. If it was a masculine noun, it would have ha, and if it was a neuter noun, it would have ta. But it would have one of those three articles, the masculine, feminine, or neuter nominative singular. Dikaiosune, that's the word for righteousness. It's typically translated righteousness. Then you go up here, the next column, dikaiao. What kind of word is that?
The verb.
Yes, it's a verb. Okay? And it's translated to make or render right or just. So, and the omega that's after the dikaiao, that's a future. That's the future ending. And it does say future right there. That's a no, the future ending is dikaiosomai. Anyway, so that's just kind of a hint to you. The next three down there are all nouns. Dikaioma has a atas is the genitive ending. Ta is the neuter article indicating that this is a neuter noun. Dikaiosis, the genitive ending is dikaioseos, and it's a feminine noun. Dikastes, genitive ending is u, and it's a nominative, or masculine noun. So anyway, that just kind of might be helpful in looking up words in a lexicon. I think it would be worth it for you to have a lexicon, because you're going to be able to find more stuff in a lexicon than you're going to be able to find online. Because I'll bring some lexicons. I have 3 or 4 different ones at home, and I'll bring some so you can look at them. But you know, you'll have maybe for some words you'll have an entire column or entire page, And what they'll do is they'll go through and they'll show how it's all kinds of different ways that it's translated, and it'll show you in different verbs, and they'll give you maybe 6 different translations, major translations of that word, and then how it's used in this verse and that verse, and it'll show you specific verses where it's used. And so you might find the very verse you're looking at in that lexicon, which would be helpful, or you might not find the very verse, but you can find something that's similar to that one that you have. So I'll bring some and recommend some to you, but how are we doing for time? Okay.
What's the difference between just a plain Greek lexicon and an analytical Greek lexicon?
Well, this is analytical, so it has every word in the New Testament, every form of every word in the New Testament. So that's a lot of space is taken up with just, every different form of a word. And then it'll have a small, little bit of meaning of a word, but most of it's just every single different form of a word that you'll find. So you don't need an analytical lexicon, because you can find the word online, what the lexical form is, or the lemma. And but a regular lexicon, and there's some old ones. Thayer's is an old one. Abbott Smith is an old one. And I like having some of the older ones as well as some of the newer ones. I have one that's just a small one, that's kind of a quick and easy one that I like to use. So I'll bring some next time and we'll look at them and talk about them. So let's look at what these assignments are and see if there's something that is that my phone? No. Somebody's got a phone going. Is that you, Bob?
What are we looking at?
Is that your phone?
Oh, no, not anymore.
Okay. So what I think would be worth it for you to do in lessons 6 and 7 is look up these words that he's got. There's only 2 sides for each of those 2 lessons, but look it up, but don't use obviously the route that he's talking about. Use whatever route you want and see what you can come up with. Okay? Some of them will be easy. What's the lexical form of spudasan? I mean, all you have to do is look it up make it easy. Don't make it hard for yourself in doing this. But at least it'll give you some exercises in looking up some specific words. Nah. This lesson 7 is on using an analytical lexicon, and you're not going to find the answers to these online. On page 7.2, and we'll finish with this. Just look on workbook 7.2. You see it? So it has, it's asking you to look at the cognates for spudazo. And that's the word that both of these lessons are. It's the word diligent, to be diligent. Translated, study to show yourself approved unto God. And then he wants you to list 4 cognates: spude, spudazo, spudatas, and spudaios. And then he wants you to look up some of those things to see what the cognates are. And the only way you're going to find out what those cognates are is to have Bagster's Analytical Lexicon. And if you don't have those, you're not going to find out what those cognates are. They want to know what page it's on in the Analytical Lexicon, and you're not going to be able to do that. So I guess there's no lesson to do, but why don't you just say anywhere that you're looking in the New Testament, find a word that you're looking at. You know, if you're looking in the New Testament in your daily Bible reading or whatever it is, and you say, I wonder what that word is in Greek. Look it up, okay? Do a few of those and just come back and tell me what you've discovered, okay? And then chapter 8, lesson 8 is... what is it about? Interpreting the form. Okay, this will be helpful. So then if we find out what its case and mood and gender and all those things are, what does that mean? And we might go into lesson 9, how to do a word study as well. So okay? Question? Are you okay?
My only question is, what is that phone buzzing?
It's yours.
What?
Your phone is vibrating.
Oh, well,
It sounds like it's coming from over here somewhere. That's what's throwing me.
I turned it off, so I guess it still vibrates.
That's the only question she has.
Yeah, no.
So what are you doing for Thanksgiving?
I'm going across the street to the neighbors.
Oh, they've invited you?
Yeah.
That's
I
nice.
could go, we've been invited to go to Portland, but I don't think I want to go to Portland.
What about you, David?
Oh, we're probably going down to my brother and sister-in-law's place in Bakersfield.
Bakersfield, you driving?
Probably taking the dogs with us, so
Oh, boy.
set them out in the backyard so they can run around with their 2 dogs,
Wow.
their 2 lads.
And you're going to go look for someplace warm?
I think that I am actually going to have my first ever absolutely alone Thanksgiving, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to it.
Really?
Yeah.
I was in college, and when Thanksgiving came, and I had to read Crime and Punishment that weekend and write a review of it for my English class, and the whole campus cleared out, and I was there all by myself. The cafeteria was closed. I had a jar of peanut butter and a jar of jam and a loaf of bread, and I was good, you know. And I had my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I just read day after day for 3 or 4 days. Well, my family called up, you know, and they're all having Thanksgiving dinner and all the food and everything like that. And, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm just reading. Did you have anything to eat? Well, I made a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they're all going, oh, we feel so bad. I'm going, no, I'm enjoying myself, actually. So I can identify a little bit with that.
Yeah. People keep telling me, oh, they're having that dinner at the church. It's a community dinner. And I'm like, oh, I'm good. It's going to be interesting, but it's going to be good.
Yeah.
So,
Read a book.
great.
Not Crime and Punishment, though.
No. Definitely.
I'm reading a book right now. This is so funny. I told Steve, our pastor, a week ago Sunday, I sit in the front row normally, right in front, because don't like to be distracted. And my wife is up teaching the kids, so I'm sitting all by myself. And he was talking about Jonah, and something in my mind, I use my iPad for my Bible, and something he said triggered my mind about the missionary David Brainerd. You ever heard of him?
Mm-hmm.
He was a missionary to the Indians in the 1700s, and he only lived to be 29 years of age. He died, and I just thought, I've never read his biography. So I'm sitting there in the front row, and so I go on Amazon and I look to see what it costs, and it's Kindle copy, and boom, I buy it and download it. And then
During the sermon.
Yeah, while he's preaching, and then I'm going, this would be really a good book to buy for my 14-year-old grandson. Maybe I could find a youth version of it. So it didn't take long. I found a youth version of it, bought it, sent it to him, and then I'm back listening to the sermon. So I told him after the sermon this Sunday, you know what I was doing last week while you were... Anyway, it's amazing what we do. So when I'm standing up there preaching, about 2,000 times I've preached a sermon.
Wow.
You never know what people are doing out there.
Mm-hmm.
If they're sleeping, you can pretty much tell. So, but then most of the time I was preaching, nobody had phones, and we didn't have internet and stuff. So.
Well, what's funny, once my nephew was listening to the sermon, he was on his phone, and afterwards the pastor asked him, what were you doing on that phone? I was looking at my Bible. You were looking at your Bible? Yeah, it's right here. So he was following along in his Bible.
Yeah, I was. Go ahead.
My daughter went to Biola.
Oh, yeah?
My oldest daughter went to Biola, and when she started in 2011, I have twins that are 19 now, but then there were 11 when we took her off to Biola. And
she was not 11 when she started, right?
The twins were 11. She was 18.
Okay.
So she was in a program that they have down there called Torrey, Torrey Honors Institute. And the guy, John Mark Reynolds, was the guy that was the leader of it then. He's not anymore, but so they had their little Torrey orientation thing. So I dragged my 11-year-old twins into this very kind of a, I was a little nervous about this whole thing because this is kind of a big deal. Daughter's starting college and Christian college and this elite program and all this stuff, and this very, very learned guy got up and talked, and I just knew that I had to keep these kids quiet, so I let them get out their phones, and my son was playing Angry Birds on his phone.
In silent mode?
In silent, totally silent. We were sitting, when we entered, they were the only seats available were in the second row, so we sat in the second row.
No.
This guy did his whole presentation, and he came down and he came down like a pastor sometimes does, comes down to sit in the front row and sat right in front of us. And then they finished the whole thing. And then he got up, this is within just 2 minutes of finishing his presentation, the thing was over, and he got up and turned around and looked at what my son was doing, and he started to talk to him about what level he was on. Like what level the professor was on in Angry Birds. And I was like, my daughter's in the right place. When a guy can get up and be so academic, be the head of this program in Biola, and still talk Angry Birds with my 11-year-old son, we're in the right place.
Yes, never done Angry Birds, so.
I don't even know if it's a thing anymore, but it was back then, years ago.
It's still on there somewhere.
Yes. So did she graduate from there?
She did, yeah.
Wow.
She graduated from Biola and went off to some other grad school things, so.
So she got a master's then?
Yeah, she has a master's.
In?
It's kind of a, she went to this place, St. John's in Santa Fe, New Mexico, that's got a similar program to the Tory thing at Biola, only it's a secular school, despite the name, St. John's. So it's
Named after
actually-
St. John's Wort?
I don't know. I don't know what it's named after, but it's like a liberal arts master's, but
Uh-huh.
it's mostly like in literature.
Uh-huh.
That's really what the focus was. Is literature. So, anyway,
Well, thank you.
Yep.
thank you.
Thanks.
What's that?
We're all meeting next week?
Yes. Yes,
The week after Thanksgiving, or is that?
we've got, I think, a couple more Thursdays
Yeah,
before Thanksgiving.
is still 3 weeks away.
It's the fourth Thursday, and this is the first. He's,
Thank you.
all right, take care.